People think the city sleeps at 4 in the morning. They're wrong. At that hour, Redwood Heights breathes differently. Slow but dangerous, like a giant animal waiting for something to wander too close to its jaws. Streetlights flicker on cracked pavement. Neon signs buzz like dying insects. The only people awake are the ones running from something, or the ones chasing them. Me? I was neither. Not that morning. I had just finished a double shift, kicked off my boots, and collapsed into bed beside my wife. Elara. Even her name felt like peace. She shifted when I climbed in, half asleep, half annoyed, draping an arm lazily across my chest. "You smell like the inside of a glove," she muttered. "I love you too," I said, and I was gone, asleep faster than I could regret the day. I should have known Redwood Heights doesn't let you rest. Not when you're a cop. Not when you think you've earned a quiet morning. At 4:22 a.m., my radio screeched to life on the nightstand. Unit 7, disturbance reported on Old Franklin Road. Possible shots fired. I opened one eye. My brain felt like wet cement. Elara sat up beside me. "Don't," she whispered, knowing I'd already made up my mind. "Call another unit." "There isn't one," I said. "We're short tonight." She sighed, that resigned exhale she'd perfected over 3 years of loving a man who came home with bruised ribs and blood on his boots far more often than flowers. "Then I'm coming with you." "No," I said automatically. But she was already sliding out of bed, pulling on jeans. "Ronan, it's Old Franklin. You said it yourself last week. Nobody's out there except teenagers getting drunk and raccoons breaking into dumpsters." She had a point. Old Franklin was practically abandoned, a stretch of forgotten road that the city never bothered to fix. A disturbance there usually meant a noise complaint or some idiot firing a gun into the trees. Still, something in my chest tugged. A warning I ignored. I wish I hadn't. We drove my unmarked sedan. She refused to ride in a squad car unless absolutely necessary. As we pulled out of our apartment complex, she rested her hand on the console, brushing mine. "You're too tense," she murmured. "I'm fine." "Liar." She smiled, that soft, crooked smile of hers, the one that made the world make sense, even when Redwood Heights didn't. The streets were empty as we crossed downtown. The skyscrapers loomed like sleeping giants, windows dark. The whole city felt like it was holding its breath. We turned onto Old Franklin. A thick blanket of fog hugged the road, swallowing the edges of the forest. My headlights carved 2 narrow tunnels through it. "You see anything?" she asked. "Not yet." A shape materialized in the fog behind us. Then another. Headlights. A car trailing a little too close. "Someone's in a hurry," Elara muttered. I sped up slightly. They sped up too. "They're tailing us," I said. Elara turned in her seat to get a better look. "Maybe they need help." "No one who needs help follows a cop at 4 a.m. on a deserted road," I said, checking my mirrors. The car pulled up beside us. Slow. Deliberate. Windows tinted black. My heartbeat thudded. "Ronan?" Elara whispered. I reached for my radio. Before my fingers touched it. Flash. 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 Gunfire exploded from the passenger window of the other car, lighting up the fog like lightning. Glass shattered. Metal screamed. The world became a hurricane of noise and flame. "Elara!" I shouted, grabbing her, pulling her down. Too late. A bullet tore into her chest. She jerked violently, eyes wide, confusion replacing fear, as if she couldn't understand how her morning ended this way. I opened my mouth to scream her name when, crack, a round slammed into my face. Searing heat. Shattering bone. The left side of my jaw exploded. My head snapped sideways, and I lost control of the wheel. The world spun. Trees. Fog. Headlights. Blood. Then, darkness. Not death. Not yet. Just the cruel mercy of unconsciousness. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was pressure. Not pain. Not fear. Just a crushing, suffocating pressure on my face, as if the world itself was sitting on my skull. My eyes fought their way open through a haze of white light. The ceiling above me was too clean, too bright, too still. A hospital. For a moment, I didn't know why I was here. Then memory struck like a hammer. Fog. Headlights. Gunfire. Elara. My heart lunged in my chest. I tried to sit up. Bad idea. Lightning ripped through my jaw and down my neck. My body arched involuntarily, monitors shrieking beside me. A nurse rushed in. "Easy, easy, Mr. Thatch, don't move. You're still healing." Healing. I reached up instinctively, feeling bandages, thick and tight, wrapped from my temple down to under my chin. Plates. Wires. Swelling. Broken bone. I couldn't open my mouth wider than a breath. My voice was a hoarse scrape. Elara. The nurse's eyes softened. And that softness told me everything before she said a single word. I'm so sorry. The world stopped. My breath froze in my chest. My fingers went numb. My heart forgot how to beat. I tried again, shaking my head violently. No. But the nurse just touched my shoulder, gently, like I was a child who couldn't understand the rules of the world yet. She died in the ambulance, she whispered. They did everything they could. A sound came out of me, a broken, choked grunt, more animal than human. I didn't even recognize it as mine. My wife. My Elara. Gone. And I wasn't there. I couldn't protect her. I couldn't even hold her hand when her world went dark. The nurse tried to calm me, but nothing could reach the place I had fallen into. Rage thrashed inside me like a trapped beast, but on the outside, I was still. Too still. Because pain that deep doesn't howl. It suffocates. Hours passed. Maybe days. Painkillers blurred the edges of time. Detectives came in at some point, 2 of them, silhouettes against the harsh room lights. Officer Thatch, one said, "We need a statement." Statement. I turned my head slowly, the movement stabbing my face from the inside out. I managed to croak out something like, "They followed us, dark car, blacked out windows 3, maybe 4 sh." My jaw seized. Fire spread through my skull. I couldn't speak any further. The detectives nodded solemnly, jotting notes I knew were useless. Then one of them said, "We'll do everything we can to find who did this." He said it the way men say things they don't believe. They left, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, drowning in the silence. The next 18 days were a blur of surgeries, burn-like swelling, narcotics that made my stomach twist, and a constant dull throb deep in my bones that reminded me every second that my face had been shattered by someone who wanted me dead. They wired my jaw shut. They inserted metal plates. They reconstructed bone. They rebuilt me like a broken machine, but a machine missing a part that could never be replaced. My mother visited, crying until her voice cracked. My partner, Hughes, sat with me sometimes, but he didn't know what to say. Nobody did. Because everyone knew the truth. Killing a cop's wife wasn't random. It was a message. To me. To the department. To the city. A warning from Redwood Heights underbelly. The gangs, the syndicates, the nameless shadows rising in our streets. And they expected me to back down. To collapse. To grieve and disappear quietly. But grief doesn't quiet a man like me. It sharpens him. On the 18th day, I stood slowly, for the first time. My legs trembled. My vision swam. My jaw ached like a caged fire. A doctor rushed over. "You shouldn't be up yet." I raised a hand. Not a gesture of defiance. Just a quiet, final line drawn in the air. I shuffled to the small mirror on the wall. For the first time since the ambush, I saw my reflection. And I barely recognized the man staring back. Left jaw swollen and misshapen. Bruises blooming around my eye. Skin stitched like a torn flag. Bandages wrapping half my face. A hollow stare where a spark used to be. I looked dead. Not physically, but in the places that mattered. I touched the mirror with my fingertips. Then, through teeth wired shut, through the pain, through the all-consuming darkness inside me, I made myself say it. The vow that would decide the rest of my life. I will find the men who killed my wife. And I will not stop until they're gone. The whisper was barely audible. But it was enough. A nurse saw me. "Mr. Thatch, come sit down. Please." I didn't move. Because for the first time since the bullets tore through that foggy road, I felt something other than grief. I felt purpose. Cold. Sharp. Final. Redwood Heights took everything from me. Now I would take something back. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. That day, I asked for my discharge papers. And when I walked, limping, stitched, broken-jawed, but breathing, out of that hospital into the cold sunlight, I carried only one thing with me. The last oath I would ever make. The day I left the hospital, Redwood Heights greeted me like an old enemy pretending to be a friend. The city looked normal. People walking their dogs. Kids waiting for the school bus. Shops opening their metal shutters. Commuters sipping burnt gas station coffee while honking at each other like they were late to something that mattered. But beneath the everyday noise, I could feel it. The rot. The quiet hum of a beast digesting the weak. You don't truly see Redwood Heights until you bleed for it. And now, with my jaw wired shut and the ghost of Elara's hand still warm in my memory, I saw everything. Every crack in the pavement. Every boarded-up house. Every graffiti tag that acted as a territorial piss mark for the gangs. Every broken bottle glinting like a warning. The city wasn't alive. It was infected. I drove myself home, slower than I wanted to, because turning my head still felt like someone jabbing a hot nail into the side of my skull. The apartment was quiet when I entered. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that punches the air out of your lungs. Her coat still hung on the hook. Her coffee mug still on the counter. Her book, The Long Way Back, was half open on the couch where she had left it. I made it 2 steps into the living room before my knees buckled. Grief isn't a wave. It's a sinkhole. One moment solid ground, the next nothing beneath you. I sat there on the floor, shaking, breathing through the wires in my jaw, trying not to fall apart. Tears blurred everything, turning the room into shifting pools of color. It took me a long time to stand again. When I finally did, something hard settled inside me. Not just rage. Something colder and more disciplined. I walked to the closet, pushed aside the coats, reached for the steel lockbox. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. Inside it were the tools I promised Elara I wouldn't use unless I absolutely had to. That promise was gone now. I holstered my off-duty Glock, loaded 3 magazines, slipped a small tactical flashlight into my pocket, clipped my badge to my belt. My jaw throbbed with each movement, a reminder of how close I came to dying, how close she came to surviving. I closed the box gently, like closing a chapter. Then I called the one person who wouldn't question me, Detective Marcus Hughes. He picked up on the second ring. Ronan. His voice was cautious, like he was afraid I'd disappear again. You're out, I grunted. Talking still hurt too much. But he understood, he always did. A heads up would have been nice, he said. Listen, don't do anything stupid, all right? I didn't respond. He sighed heavily. Okay, fine. Come by the precinct. There's something you should see. Something in his tone tightened my grip on the phone. Is it about the case? I muttered through wired teeth. Yes, he said. But you're not going to like it. I hung up and headed for the door. The precinct buzzed with the usual morning chaos. Phones ringing. Doors slamming. Officers rushing past each other. Nobody looked at me at first, not because they didn't recognize me, but because they didn't want to. When someone loses a wife, people avert their eyes. When someone survives an assassination attempt, they whisper. When someone is both, they stare too long, then look away too fast. Hughes met me in the hallway. He was tall, with a gut he pretended wasn't new, and eyes that had seen too many things he'd never talk about. Jesus, Ronan, he murmured when he saw the damage. You look like you got into a bar fight with a wood chipper. I didn't smile. Couldn't. He motioned me toward the case room. Walls covered in photos. Maps. Red string. Bullet trajectory charts. A blurred image of a black sedan with tinted windows. Where are we? I asked. Hughes hesitated. Not a good sign. We've got almost nothing, Ronan. I stared at him. No plates. No model. No suspects. Nothing that holds, he said. The car was stolen. The witnesses were useless. Gang chatter is dead silent. It's like someone scrubbed the whole damn city. A slow, cold burn crawled through my veins. They were professionals, he said quietly. This wasn't random. I already knew that. Hughes swallowed hard before adding. And there's something else. He reached into a folder and pulled out a printed transcript, police radio logs, the morning of the shooting. A dispatch call I never heard. Unit 7, be advised possible trap. Suspected ambush on Old Franklin Road. Backup en route. Timestamp, 4:20 a.m. 2 minutes before we arrived. 2 minutes before Elara was killed. My pulse hammered. You're telling me someone warned the department? Before it happened. Hughes nodded. I didn't see this until yesterday. And no one called me. We don't know why. I stared at the transcript until the ink seemed to ripple. There were 3 possibilities. 1, dispatch screwed up. 2, someone intercepted the warning. 3, someone wanted me dead and made sure help never reached me. Hughes lowered his voice. Ronan, there's more. The warning came from an anonymous number. Not an officer. Who was it? Don't know. But whoever it was scared. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his face. And now, that number's been disconnected. No trace. Nothing. The cold burn became a flame. Someone in Redwood Heights knew I was being targeted. Someone tried to save me. Someone tried to stop the ambush. And the people who killed Elara? They were still out there. Breathing. Laughing. Planning. Hughes stepped closer. Listen to me carefully. You need rest. You need time. This case is radioactive. The department won't let you. I cut him off by picking up the photo of the black sedan. The edges curled slightly under my fingers. Ronan, Hughes warned, don't do this alone. I lifted my eyes to his. I'm already alone. I turned and walked out of the room. Every step felt like a nail being driven deeper into a coffin. Mine or theirs, I didn't know yet. But one thing was certain. Redwood Heights had taken something I could never get back. And now the city was going to bleed. Because I wasn't looking for justice anymore. I was hunting. I didn't go home after leaving the precinct. Home wasn't home anymore. It was a mausoleum with working electricity. Instead, I drove toward the Forgotten District, the place everyone in Redwood Heights pretended didn't exist, even as it swallowed more lives every year. Before Elara died, I avoided it unless I had backup or a warrant. Now, I didn't give a damn about either. The Forgotten District sat on the east side of the city, a strip of half-collapsed warehouses, needle-littered alleyways, and condemned buildings rented under the table by people who lived outside the law and liked it that way. Gangs called it the Bones. Cops called it a containment zone. The mayor called it an urban renewal opportunity, which was code for something we'll pretend to fix 5 years too late. But the criminals? They called it home. And I was certain the men who killed Elara had ties here. Maybe not directly, but someone in the Bones always knew something. Information flowed through this place like an underground river. Dirty, hidden, but always moving. As I crossed under the elevated train tracks, a familiar tightness gripped my chest, not fear. Instinct. Predator instinct. I slowed the car and scanned the streets. People noticed me immediately. Strangers don't blend here, especially not wounded cops wearing determination like a target. 3 men in hoodies watched from a stoop. A woman with track marks stared at my license plate like she was memorizing it. An old man sweeping the sidewalk stiffened when he saw my badge. Everyone here had one thing in common. They recognized trouble. And I was an avalanche looking for a slope. I started with someone I trusted. Mika wiretapped Salazar. Calling him a street informant was too generous. He was a scavenger of secrets, a paranoid genius with connections everywhere he shouldn't have them. He used to be a coder before meth, and a gambling debt derailed his life, turning him into the city's most jittery human police scanner. If anyone had heard whispers about a planned hit on a cop, it was him. His hiding place, an abandoned laundromat, still smelled like detergent and cigarette ash. The front windows were boarded up, and the faded sign above the door read, Suds of Love. Open 7 days. It had been closed for 15 years. I didn't knock. The door wasn't locked, because locks don't stop bullets, and anyone who really wanted Mika dead wouldn't bother with politeness. Inside, the glow of computer screens cast eerie blue shadows across mountains of wires, food wrappers, and tangled headphones. Mika sat hunched over a keyboard, tapping with the desperation of a man who believed keystrokes kept his heart beating. He froze when he saw me. Oh, hell no, he whispered. No. You're supposed to be in a hospital bed, man. Or a coffin. Surprised? I asked, my voice muffled by the wires in my jaw. Surprised. He scrambled up like a spooked squirrel. Ronan, the whole city thinks you're either dead or hiding. And now you're standing in my living room, bleeding and brooding like some vengeful gargoyle? Yeah, I'm surprised. His eyes darted toward the exit, as if expecting someone to burst in behind me. Nobody followed me, I said. That's what everyone says right before assassins kick down the door, he muttered. I stepped closer. Slowly. Deliberately. I need information. Oh, I knew it, Mika groaned. You're here for the forbidden stuff. The stuff that gets people chopped up and mailed back in Ziploc bags. Look at you, you're a walking obituary. Mika. My tone sharpened. He shut up. I handed him a printed photo. The blurry, black sedan caught on highway cam, seconds before the ambush. He stared at it. His fingers twitched. Tell me what you know. I don't. Mika. He swallowed hard. Fine. He took the picture to his desk and shoved it under a magnifying lamp. This car, he muttered, examining angles, shadows, slight distortions. It doesn't belong here. What do you mean? I mean, nobody in the Bones drives a car like this. This tint, industrial grade. This model, foreign import. This wheelbase. Government fleet style. He glanced up at me. This car belongs to someone who doesn't want to be found. Someone with money. My pulse quickened. Cartels. Nope. Federal agents? Wrong again. My fingers curled into fists. Mika, someone put a hit on me. Someone shot Elara. Who in Redwood Heights has that kind of firepower? He hesitated. And when Mika hesitated, it meant the truth was dangerous. He lowered his voice until it barely existed. There's a rumor, he whispered. Whispers about a new group rising in the city. They call themselves the Harvesters. The name sent a wave of cold down my spine. Street gang? I asked. He shook his head. A syndicate. Organized. Smart. Connected. They're not in the business of selling drugs or running street corners. They're bigger. Black market logistics, high-end contracts, political leverage. They move like ghosts and talk through intermediaries. No names, no faces. Just results. And someone hired them to kill me? Someone hired them to kill her, he said quietly. My breath stopped. What? Mika looked at me with something like pity. They weren't trying to shoot you, Ronan. You were the collateral. The intended target was your wife. The world tilted sideways. Rage surged through me so violently I had to brace against a washing machine to keep from falling. Elara. She wasn't hit by accident. Someone wanted her dead. My voice came out strangled. Why? I don't know, Mika said quickly. But I can tell you this. The Harvesters only take contracts with one condition. The highest bidder wins. No morality. No questions. Just money. I clenched my jaw, pain exploding in my face, but I forced the words out anyway. Who hired them? Mika flinched, stepping back. Do you think I'd still be alive if I knew that? I grabbed the collar of his hoodie. He trembled. Ronan, listen to me. You're walking into the kind of darkness you don't come back from. I don't intend to come back, I growled. He stared at me, really stared, and what he saw must have scared him more than the Harvesters ever could. Because he whispered, You're not the same man you were before. No, I said. I'm not. He swallowed and leaned closer. There's one more thing. A name. Someone who might know more. But you didn't hear it from me. Who? He hesitated again, then whispered. Marcellus Vane. The name hit me like a hammer. A loan shark. Fixer. Rumored middleman for contract killings. A man with more blood on his ledger than most morgues. If someone hired the Harvesters, Mika said, Vane would have been the broker. I stepped back. Where is he? I don't know exactly, but he hangs around a nightclub called the Gilded Hush. VIP only. Criminal royalty territory. You don't walk in unless you plan to walk out with a limp or a contract over your head. I holstered my Glock. Mika's eyes widened. You're going now. Now. He grabbed my arm. Ronan, this is suicide. I paused at the door. No, I said quietly. This is justice. Then I walked out, leaving Mika standing in the blue light of his screens, shaking like he had just seen a ghost. Maybe he had. Because the man who walked into that laundromat wasn't the same man who left it. The old Ronan Thatch died on Old Franklin Road. The new one had one purpose. Find Marcellus Vane. Find the Harvesters. Find whoever wanted my wife dead. And bury them all. I parked in the alley behind the Pinecrest Motel, killed the engine, and sat in the quiet darkness with my hands wrapped around the steering wheel like I wanted to strangle it. The neon sign buzzed overhead, throwing flickers of blue light that danced across the hood of my sedan like ghosts trying to climb inside. Devlin's room was 2B. Morrell's notes said he'd been here for 3 nights. Paid in cash. Never stayed more than a week in one place. The motel clerk, a college dropout with stretched earlobes and a vape pen, had told me Devlin was kinda twitchy man, but he tips. Twitchy meant paranoid. Paranoid meant dangerous. But I'd come too far to feel fear tonight. I checked the Glock at my hip. Full mag safety off. Nothing elegant. Nothing heroic. Just a tool. I took a breath so deep it scraped the bottom of my lungs, then stepped out of the car and pulled my hood over my head. The night air was heavy with the smell of old cigarettes and wet pavement, the scent every cheap roadside motel seemed to be born with. This was where people hid, and where people disappeared. The walkway leading to Devlin's door was quiet. A TV murmured from somewhere inside another room, muffled by paper-thin walls. I walked slow, measured. My boots made soft thuds against the concrete, like the night itself was warning him. I stopped at 2B, pressed my ear to the wood, and listened. A soft shuffle. A cough. A click. Maybe a lighter. Maybe a gun. I knocked once. Firm. Not police style. Not hesitant either. Just enough to say, I know you're in there. For several seconds, nothing. Then, a soft scrape. Someone moving toward the door. A shadow shifted under the frame. Who is it? A man's voice. Rough, young, impatient. I didn't answer. The peephole darkened. My fist clenched. My pulse evened out to a calm, cold rhythm. The one that always came right before violence, like my body was stepping aside and letting something older take over. Maintenance, I said flatly. A pause. Man, it's 2 a.m. Maintenance for what? I didn't blink. For you. The chain slid. The deadbolt clacked. The door opened an inch, and I kicked it inward so hard it bounced off the wall. Devlin stumbled back, wide-eyed, reaching for a gun on the nightstand. I slammed him into the dresser before his hand got halfway there. He swung a wild punch that grazed my jaw. He was younger than I expected, 25? 28. And strong, but his strength was panicked. Unfocused. I pinned his arm down with my forearm and grabbed his throat with my other hand. Where were you the night of the Hillcrest hit? I growled, my voice low. I don't know what you're talking. I shoved him harder against the dresser. The wood cracked behind him. You were there, I said. I'm not asking. I'm confirming. His eyes darted toward the gun again. You want to die fast or slow? I asked. He froze. His breathing turned into sharp, broken gasps. I let go of his throat long enough for him to cough and spit blood. You a cop, he choked out. Once, I said. Right now I'm a man who wants names. His fear changed shape. He knew exactly which moment he was in. Knew there was no version of this where he walked out clean. We didn't know she was with you, he stammered. My stomach twisted. Say that again. He swallowed. We didn't know. The order was you. Not her. She was wrong place wrong. I slammed his head into the dresser, so hard the mirror shattered. He fell to the carpet, glass raining around him. He coughed, blood spilling from his lip and nose. Ronan, please. He finally spoke my name. Good. Who gave the order? I demanded. He shook his head. They'll kill me. I crouched and pulled him up by his hoodie. They already did, I said. You just haven't stopped breathing yet. He stared at me, trembling. Then his eyes flicked over my shoulder. It was the kind of look that only means someone else is here. I spun, but not fast enough. The gunshot tore into my left shoulder, knocking me backward into the wall. A second shot hit the dresser beside my head, spraying splinters across my face. I dropped behind the bed as a tall figure burst in through the open door. A silhouette, heavy boots, long coat, rifle in hand. Devlin scrambled toward the bathroom to flee, but the newcomer fired once, clean and casual. Devlin fell face first onto the carpet, dead before he hit the ground. The shooter stepped inside fully now, blocking the only exit. He stared right at the bed where I hid. I recognized him immediately, even through the dim motel light, even through the shock wave of pain ripping through my shoulder. It was the same man from Hillcrest, the one with the leather gloves, the one who fired the second round, the one meant to kill me. He knew me. He came back to finish the job. He took a slow step closer. I knew you'd find Devlin, he said, his voice a cold rumble. You always were the persistent type. I pressed my back against the wall, blood soaking my shirt. Who are you? I called out, voice tight with pain. He lifted the rifle, and the barrel glinted. You're not supposed to be alive, Thatch. Funny, I said, forcing a dry laugh. I was thinking the same about you. He lifted the gun higher. Say goodnight. I kicked the bed upward with everything I had. The mattress flipped, slamming into him long enough to throw off his aim. The shot blew a hole in the ceiling instead of my skull. I lunged for Devlin's gun on the nightstand as the man tore the mattress aside and raised his rifle again. My fingers closed around the grip. I dove behind the dresser just as he unleashed a burst of fire that shredded the nightstand into splinters. You're making this messy, Thatch, he shouted. That's the idea, I hissed. I popped up and fired twice. One bullet grazed his arm. The other hit the doorframe as he ducked. He cursed, stumbled backward, then bolted out into the walkway. The rifle held tight against his body. I chased him out despite the pain ripping through me. He fired once behind him, forcing me to duck. Then he sprinted down the stairs and vanished into the shadows behind the motel. I reached the railing and aimed, but he was gone, completely, like smoke. I stood there breathing hard, my shoulder bleeding freely, Devlin dead inside the room behind me, and the night colder than it had been a minute ago. The gunman got away. But I saw his face. And he saw mine. And that changed everything. For months I'd been hunting ghosts. Now I finally had a man. A real enemy. A living thread that led straight into the heart of the people who murdered my family. I clutched my wounded shoulder and steadied myself. Would begin with his name, and end with someone else's blood. The motel manager was yelling something behind me as I staggered toward my car, one hand pressed against my shoulder. He must have heard the gunfire, or Devlin's scream, or maybe he was just realizing his Yelp rating was about to plummet. I didn't stop for him. Blood seeped between my fingers and soaked into my shirt. Every heartbeat sent a jolt of hot pain across my chest. I sat in the driver's seat, breathing through clenched teeth, waiting for the world to stop spinning long enough to drive. The man in the long coat. The one from Hillcrest. He wasn't a rumor anymore. He was flesh, muscle, anger, and he'd come very close to killing me. Again, but he made one mistake. He let me see him under the neon light. Square jaw, cropped dark hair, a thin scar across the bridge of his nose, and those eyes cold, steady, like he'd been staring down rifle scopes since childhood. A professional. Not a street thug. Not a desperate kid. A trained executioner. Someone's favorite monster. I started the car and pulled away from the motel, my vision blurring every few seconds. My shoulders screamed every time I turned the wheel. But I didn't drive to a hospital. Hospitals ask too many questions. I needed to disappear, not create records. I drove to the only place in the city where no one dared follow me anymore. My old precinct. Not inside it. Just the parking lot behind it, near the abandoned storage building they hadn't maintained since budget cuts took half their fuel money. Right beside the broken lamppost, hidden from the street. My spot. My hide. I sat there until the trembling in my hand stopped enough for me to pull out my phone. There was only one person I could call. Not Moral. Not anyone in uniform. Someone who owed me a favor, and who didn't care about bleeding men in parking lots. I hit the contact labeled Elara. It rang twice. Then a voice answered, smooth and sharp as broken glass. Ronan Thatch. Either you missed my voice, or you're dying again. Not dying, I said, leaning back. Just leaking. She clicked her tongue. You always did have a poetic way of saying, IF** ket up. Where are you? Behind the precinct. The old storage unit. That place is crawling with cops. I know. A pause. Then, be there in 5. She hung up. Elara Torv wasn't a friend. She was something more complicated. We met years earlier during a sting operation gone sideways. She was an underground medic, patching up criminals, smugglers, anyone who paid enough. I arrested 3 of her patients. She patched a bullet wound in my thigh before backup arrived. Call it even, she'd said. We weren't even. I owed her. And she owed me. A strange, quiet, dangerous balance. Her motorcycle arrived exactly 4 minutes and 40 seconds later. She swung off it with the same violence she used to cut stitches. Black jeans, combat boots, dark hair tied tight, a leather jacket that always smelled faintly of antiseptic and gun oil. She saw the blood soaking through my shirt and raised an eyebrow. Looks like someone shot a buffalo. Lucky them, I said. Buffaloes don't shoot back. She stepped closer. Inside. Now. If you have enjoyed this story so far, please click the like button, comment what you think, and subscribe. Watch and listen to the final part, the part 2 of this story, and hear how I got my brutal revenge.